Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about the types of chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is of a long duration, lasting for weeks, months, or even years. And also, the characteristics of chronic inflammation are infiltration of mononuclear cells, tissue damage and repair, proliferation of new vessels, and fibrosis. Today's topic is types of chronic inflammation. The two types of chronic inflammation that I'm talking about in today's video are one, acute chronic inflammation, two, granulomatous inflammation. So let's start from the first one, acute chronic inflammation. Okay, now let me refresh our mind a little. Chronic inflammation, like I said, is of a long duration, but acute inflammation is of a short duration. The major cell that is seen in acute inflammation is the neutrophils, while the major cell that is seen in chronic inflammation is the macrophage. So back to acute chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation can progress from acute inflammation, or the response may be chronic from the onset. So in this type of chronic inflammation, the acute chronic, it's so obvious that this particular type of chronic inflammation is progressing from acute inflammation. There was acute inflammation initially, and then at some point, acute inflammation stopped and chronic inflammation took over. Acute inflammation got tired of the journey and decided to give up. So chronic inflammation came in and continued the journey. So neutrophils can sometimes be seen in chronic inflammation. They're the main cells that are seen in acute inflammation. Does not mean that they are only seen in acute inflammation. So these cells, they are mainly seen. These cells, like the neutrophils, they're the main cells of acute inflammation. Does not mean you only see it in acute inflammation. You still see it in cases of chronic inflammation, especially in this type of chronic inflammation, the acute chronic, where it is progressing from the acute to the chronic. Example of such diseases, we have the actinomycosis and the chronic osteomyelitis. In the actinomycosis, like you constantly see the presence of neutrophils in the center of the lesion. Like after the initial infection, weeks, months, or years after the initial infection, you still be seeing neutrophils in the center of the lesion. So will you call this type of inflammation acute? No, acute inflammation is of a short duration. Chronic inflammation is the one that is of a long duration, lasting for weeks, months, and even years. So, but then there are neutrophils. So it doesn't make it acute inflammation. No, it is a chronic inflammation. You can also see pus in chronic inflammation. Like you see pus and neutrophils in chronic inflammation. So these pus and neutrophils, they are not only always seen in cases of acute inflammation. Okay, so that's it for the acute chronic inflammation. Now let's talk about the second type of chronic inflammation, the granulomatous inflammation. This type of chronic inflammation, the granulomatous chronic inflammation, is characterized by the formation of a granuloma. And this granuloma is formed by the accumulation of activated macrophages known as epithelioid cells. They are called epithelioid cells because they have epithelial-like appearance. So, like I said before, the accumulation of activated macrophages, which are surrounded by a rim of lymphocytes, will form what is called a granuloma. Examples of diseases where you see granulomatous inflammation, we have one, tuberculosis, two, actinomycosis, three, actinobacillosis. So this granuloma formation is usually formed in the presence of resistant T lymphocytes or T cell responses to certain microbes, such as the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is because T lymphocytes or the T cells, they produce cytokines which are responsible for the activation of macrophages. So the cytokines produced by T lymphocytes, they are the ones that will activate these macrophages to become epithelioid cells. In tuberculosis, the granuloma formed is called a tubercle. And this tubercle is characterized by a central caseous necrosis. Then you now see the epithelioid cells and then a rim of lymphocytes. But this is rare in other granulomatous diseases. In other granulomatous diseases, you only just see the epithelioid cells, surrounded by a rim of lymphocytes. You will not always see the central caseous necrosis. This central caseous necrosis is just like is peculiar to tuberculosis. So that's why the granuloma that is formed in tuberculosis is called a tubercle. Granuloma formation does not always remove the irritant. Granuloma formation does not always remove the irritant. This is because, like I said before, the irritants that usually cause chronic inflammation, they are of low intensity. They do not activate the body defenses to remove them or destroy them. They are just there doing, nothing. So this granuloma formation does not always remove the irritant. Mostly what this granuloma formation does is to wall off the irritant from the surrounding tissues or organ. Like it just wall off the irritant, like a kind of imprisoning the irritant. So the irritant does no longer have freedom of movement. It does no longer, it cannot be able to leave that premises. It's just, surrounded within a particular premises. So remember that this macrophages, like they have engulfing power, like phagocytosis, but then they are not able to do anything sometimes because these irritants are of low intensity, and then some other times they kill and remove the irritants, but then mainly what they do is just to wall off these irritants, like kind of caging them, imprisoning them so they don't go over to other parts of the body, spread to other parts of the body, causing problems up and down. Okay, so this granuloma is also a body defense mechanism. Granuloma is also a body defense mechanism. And that's it for the types of chronic inflammation. So now let's talk about the difference between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. The first one, acute inflammation is of a short duration, while chronic inflammation is of a long duration. Number two, acute inflammation is usually caused by irritants that are more severe, while chronic inflammation is caused by irritants of low intensity. Then another difference in acute inflammation, there are marked vascular changes, while in chronic inflammation, reduced vascular changes. In acute inflammation, there's profuse exudation. In chronic inflammation, scanty exudation. In acute inflammation, it has a soft consistency. So acute inflammation has a soft consistency, while chronic inflammation has a firm consistency. Then in chronic inflammation, there is proliferation of blood vessels and epithelium, while in acute inflammation, it is absent. And that's it for today's video, guys. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you'll be the first to get notified when I drop my next video. And please, guys, subscribe to my channel. Help me grow. Okay, so don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Okay, see you in my next video. Bye.